Hi guys, welcome back to Spaceboy by David Walliams. We're going to read chapter 34, Hullabaloo, and a few others. Um, this is all David Walliams' own work. I'm just reading it for entertainment and pleasure. Let's get going. Chapter 34, Hullabaloo. There was a flow of excitement in the Oval Office. The whole world had watched the President's live television address. People had crowded around the windows of television shops in the streets just to catch a glimpse of this visitor from another planet. Well, he really was from the town next to Ruth's, but nobody knew that, of course, except her and Yuri, but neither was about to spill the beans. It was all too much fun, fooling the entire world. The question was, how long could they keep up the act? In moments, every telephone in the White House began ringing. Ring, 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 and the sound was deafening. Ring, 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 ring. Yuri howled. Roar! Ruth put her hands over Yuri's ears. Ring, 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 ring. In turn, Spaceboy put his gloved hands over Ruth's ears. Voices began to call out. Mr. President, it's Her Majesty the Queen. Mr. President, it's His Holiness the Pope. Mr. President, it's the Chairman of China. Mr. President, it's the Russian Premier. Mr. President, it's Elvis. The President's face lit up with glee. Elvis, I love Elvis. What did he want? He shouted over the hullabaloo. Ring, 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 ring. Mr. President, they all want to meet Spaceboy, the voices shouted back. Ruth beamed. In an instant, Spaceboy had become a superstar, more famous than anyone who had ever walked on the earth. Ruth was sure that in no time they could be rich beyond their wildest dreams. In their mind's eye, she saw a whole range of Spaceboy's merchandise. Bowling balls, dress-up costumes, lunch boxes, cuddly toys, ice lollies, chocolate bars, slippers, badge sets, pencil sets, action figures, sticker sets, underpants, and soap on the rope, helmet, egg cups, school bags, jelly molds, board games, pillowcases, bubble bath, even a chewy dog toy for Yuri. The President began swinging his golf club in time with the telephone rings. Ring, 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 ring. Holding onto his toupee, he leaped up onto his chair. Then he climbed onto the desk which had been righted by the butler and swished his golf club through the air. Swish! Well, tell them they all can't. But, Mr. President, came a chorus of voices. Spaceboy is mine, all mine. His staff all looked at him as if he had gone bananas, even though he had always been bananas. He shouted over the din, mine, 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 or so he thought, because at that moment the doors to the Oval Office burst open and hit the walls. Bang, bang! Suddenly everybody stopped what they were doing and stood dead still. The President stopped swinging and started to look more than a little awkward up there on his desk. In a rolling, chilling sight, at first it looked like a robot. It was a metal box on wheels with what seemed to be arms, 4 in total. On top of the box was a large glass jar turned upside down. It was what was in the jar that was most shocking. At first it looked like a giant egg. In fact, it was a head, a human head, the bald head of an old man. One of the eyes was black with a red light at the centre of it, a robot eye. And then there's a picture. It says, grabber, egghead, robot eye, glass jar, laser blaster, toilet plunger, wheels, metal box, metal arm with a hand. Ruth wondered if the man were dead, but the other eye blinked and the lips moved. He spoke in a thick German accent. No, Mr. President, Spaceboy is mine. Ruth, Yuri and Spaceboy all began shaking with nerves. This man was deeply sinister. Chapter 35, A Dark Turn. Who are you? Demanded Ruth, suddenly feeling very protective of her new friend, Kevin, also known as Spaceboy. Yuri leaped down from her arms and began barking at this intruder. Woof, woof, woof. One of the metal arms from the side of the box pointed in the dog's direction and let out a zap of electricity. Twas Youch! Yelped Yuri as he sped off and leaped back up into his mistress's arms. Ruth held her little pet tight. Don't hurt my dog, she exclaimed. Next time it barks at me, I will put it out of misery forever. The head in the jar replied with a sinister smile. The President sheepishly stepped down from his desk. He approached the half-man, half-robot, sticking out a hand to shake one of the metal appendages before thinking better of it. He might get zapped too. Welcome to the White House, Dr. Socks, said the president. It's shock, not sock. Well, welcome to the White House, Doctor. My first and I hope last time, replied the doctor, looking around in disdain at the Oval Office. That blue rug does not go with those yellow curtains. Yuck! Spaceboy, let me introduce you to the doctor. I will introduce myself, snapped the head. I am Dr. Shock. That's shock, not sock. Schock. Shock. As a young boy, I dreamed of only rockets. Me too, chirped Ruth. It was nice. I was a science genius from the age of 2 and soon rose through the ranks of military research. 20 years ago, the world was at war. I was ordered to create a top secret rocket bomb by the Führer himself, one that would travel the edge of the space before striking the Earth and kaboom! Happy, carefree, fun-filled days. But late at night, one of my rockets exploded by accident. All the scientists at my secret laboratory were killed, except me, the great indestructible Dr. Shock. All they found was my head and little toe, and as you can see, they put back together perfectly. And I have to admit, I have never felt better. With that, Dr. Shock made a little twirl on his wheels, knocking over a chair as he did so. Shunk. The Americans made a deal with me after the war was lost. One, I think, replaced the president. Please do not interrupt. Sorry, Dr. Shock. I was told by the American Secret Service that I would be spared a trial if I came to work with them on their space program. My rocket dream was still alive, but right now the Russians are years ahead of the Americans. They have already put a man in space, Yuri Gagarin. Yuri the dog nodded his head. So the space program needs your help, Spaceboy. I need you to share all your secrets of interplanetary travel with me. Ruth glowed bright red. She felt as if she were really going to burn up. Suddenly, the lie of who was really under that helmet had taken a dark and dangerous turn. This scientific genius was sure to see through him in an instant. Ruth turned to her new friend. She saw beads of sweat trickle down from under his helmet. He was feeling the heat too. And if he doesn't want to, asked Ruth, then I will take Spaceboy to my special laboratory where the alien brain can be removed and studied. That way, it is sure to spill out all its secrets. Yes, shouted Spaceboy in a voice much higher than before. I would love to help. You see, that wasn't too hard, was it? Purred the doctor. I'm so glad we understand each other. Now, just so I know that I'm speaking to a real-life alien form, would you be so kind as to remove your helmet? Chapter 36, Half Man, Half Robot. Was the game up? All eyes turned to Spaceboy. If he took off the helmet, then everybody would know the secret, that he really was just a boy from nowhere called Kevin. That was the worst part. Spaceboy was so nervous he let go of the squeakiest bottom blast. Then he affected the deepest, spookiest, otherworldliest voice he could. I can never take off my helmet, he lied, as your earth air will kill me. That bottom air will kill me, hissed Ruth. Shh, he hissed back. Will it indeed? Thought Dr. Shock out loud. With your permission, Mr. President, I will take this thing with me to NASA's Space Center at the Cape Carnival. We are now tantalizingly close to launching our first American rocket into space. All your rockets have crashed, Dr. Shock, replied the president. Shock, thank you for reminding me, sneered the half-man, half-robot. I am confident that with the secrets we can gather from this intergalactic traveller, we will be able to overtake the Russians forever. Good luck, whispered Ruth. Oh no, murmured Spaceboy under his breath. What was that? Demanded Dr. Shock. Nothing, replied Spaceboy in a high jittery voice before reverting to his deep voice. Nothing. Spaceboy, follow me, ordered the doctor. His metal box spun round fast. This time his longest protuberance knocked over one of the president's many assistants. Oof! Oof! Spaceboy took Ruth's hand and held on to it tight. They both nodded to the president, who smiled weakly and began following the doctor out of the Oval Office. Then Dr. Shock came to an abrupt halt. No, he barked. The girl and her wretched hound have no use in the Space Center. They must stay behind. No, 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 spluttered Spaceboy. If I come back with you, then Ruth and Yuri come too. That name made the doctor's face contort in fury. Yuri? Yes, spluttered Ruth. As in Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, the Russian. Yes! He spun round, toppling over her bookcase. Clunk! It fell on top of another assistant who was knocked out instantly. Donk. Ugh. I spit the name, Yuri Gangren, sneered the doctor. With that, he spat hard. Spluck. The doctor may have been aiming for the ground, but he must have momentarily forgotten that his head was encased in a glass jar. So instead, the spit he hit the glass. Spoink. Before dribbling down the inside dribble, he struggled to operate his four protuberances, but none could reach the jar. For goodness sake, someone wipe this bottom off. This instant, he shouted, as if it were all their fault. The assistants all whipped out their handkerchiefs and descended on the glass, but as the spit was on the inside, despite some frantic wiping on the outside, squeak, 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 there was absolutely nothing they could do. Get away from me, you fools, barked Dr. Shock. They swept as far away from him as has a metal body as far as they could. Then the girl and the dog may come too, he said. Spaceboy squeezed Ruth's hand tight, and together with Yuri they followed in this terrifying half-man, half-robot out of the Oval Office. Have a great day, folks, called the President after them. Chapter 37, Spaceboy Mania. Prrrr. NASA Supreme Superplane was waiting for them on the lawn of the White House, ready to whisk our heroes off to the Space Center at Cape Canaveral. It was like something from the future, a supersonic airplane that had powerful thrusters on its wings so it could take off vertically. There was no need for a runaway. The doctor passed Major Majors, who was now sitting up with a bag of ice on his head, then trundled forwards of the Supreme in his metal box. When he reached it, he activated a mechanism that lifted him up into the air, raising him into the plane. Meanwhile, a huge crowd had formed along the outside of the railings of the White House. People were abandoning their vehicles in the middle of the road and dashing to join them. Soon there was a sea of faces staring in. Men and women were clamoring to catch a glimpse of this visitor from another planet. Mothers were raising their babies aloft so they could witness history in the making. Someone was even holding up their sausage dog, who looked completely uninterested. There were screams, cheers, and shouts when Spaceboy walked across the White House lawn, his silver cape flapping in the wind. Woo! The noise was deafening. There was nothing short of a Spaceboy mania. The crowd chanted his name, clapped their hands, and stamped their feet. Spaceboy, Spaceboy, Spaceboy! What shall I do? He hissed to Ruth. I don't know, he hissed back. Smile and wave, that's what famous people do. Spaceboy managed to wave at least. That was enough for the crowd to go bananas. Hurrah! I love you, Spaceboy, I love you more. No, I love you the most. Just as Spaceboy, Ruth and Yuri were about to reach the superplane, a swarm of reporters descended on them. For a moment, Ruth thought they were going to be trampled. They encircled the trio so they couldn't escape, all pointing their cameras and microphones at them. As the cameras clicked and whirred, Ruth did everything she could to hide behind Spaceboy. If she was captured on film, her wicked Aunt Dorothy would know exactly where she was. No doubt, the cruel old lady would march to the White House and drag her all the way home by her ear, and it was a very long way. Shouts from the reporters came thick and fast. Spaceboy, are you going to obliterate our planet? Spaceboy, is this the first step in alien invasion? Spaceboy, who made the universe? Spaceboy, did you get held up by pyramids in Egypt 1,000 years ago? Spaceboy, what exactly is a dork? Spaceboy, do you eat hamburgers? Spaceboys, do you have a favourite Beatle? John, Paul, or George or Ringo? Spaceboy, is this your Earth's girlfriend? The pack of reporters all fell silent. Someone at the back of the pack went woo, and the others shushed. Then, as they desperately wanted to hear the answer, this could be the scoop of the century, a love story across the universe. Just think of the headlines: the proposal, the wedding, the honeymoon, the children. Half human and half alien. No, boomed Ruth. I am not his girlfriend, and I never will be. I don't like boys. Boys make me want to hurl. Ooh, half the reporters. Never, agreed Spaceboy. I don't like girls either. They make me want to space puke. Boring, came a shout. Give her a kiss anyway. It would make a nice shot, came another. No, thundered Ruth. No kisses with boys, ever, ever, ever. Boo, echoed one. Well, Spaceboy, at least take off your helmet. Yes, give us a great picture. We just want to see your alien face. It's just like all weird and alien. No, Spaceboy boomed. Rubbish! Come on! Just a peek, a little look-see, a sneaky peep. Then a forest of hands began reaching out towards Spaceboy's helmet. They wanted to see the face of the very first alien to land on planet Earth. This story was too big to miss. Yuri growled. Grrr. Ruth tried to slap the hands away. Get off him! He can't breathe without it! But more and more just kept coming. Just for a moment. A bit of earth air can't harm him. Who cares if he dies? It would make a great picture. Now there were 10 more hands clasped onto the helmet, with more joining, all the same. The space boy was using his might to stop it from being whipped off. If his identity were exposed, the boy would be deep doo-doo. But it was no use. Space Boy just wasn't strong enough to win a tug of war with a dozen grown-ups. Just his spotty chin was looming dangerously into view. There was sound of a huge thud. Most of the reporters were knocked onto the ground in an instant. Ouch! Oof! Ah! Yow! Please get your big fat behind out of my face! Came a shout from a reporter at the bottom of the pile of people. Now Dr. Shock was looming over them. He had rammed into reporters to save Spaceboy. Spaceboy's secrets will remain secret for now, announced the doctor. Now you make your way or I'll be forced to use my appendages on you. The reporters moved aside to make path for the three. Ruth, Yuri, and Spaceboy made their way to the superplane. Looking down out of the window as they took off, Ruth could see that all around the White House, thousands of people had gathered. Traffic had stopped. People were climbing on top of their cars just to see him. Ruth nudged Spaceboy so he didn't miss the scenes below. The whole city of Washington, D.C. had come to standstill. People were everywhere, hanging out of windows, climbing statues, standing on roofs of tall buildings, all waving up at the superplane as it rose into the air. All, oops, sorry. This is like a balloon. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, hissed Ruth. And any moment now it's going to burst, breathed Spaceboy. Yuri couldn't take any more. He covered his eyes with his paws. Part 4 Heroes. Chapter 38 A Throng of Boffins. In no time, the supersonic superplane reached the NASA Space Center. Oops. Oh, sorry, I lost my page there a little bit. At Cape Canaveral. Ruth had been obsessed with outer space and space rockets since she could remember. She had never dared to dream that she would ever come here. Girls like her didn't get to visit places like these. Now she was seeing with her own eyes these towering rockets pointing up at the sky, poised for adventure. To venture into the unknown, to hurl themselves into the infinite. For Ruth, the Space Center felt like her Neverland, her Oz, her Wonderland. The girl had seen glimpses of the center in Aunt Dorothy's old newspapers, but she could never have imagined the vastness of it. From the sky, it looked as wide as the city, with the rockets as tall as skyscrapers. The superplane wound its way around one. How to spot a boffin. Big picture as well. Big head in which to store a brain. Wild hair. Wild-looking eyes. Unruly nostril, hair and ear. Wild frame spectacles. Row of black biros, slightly chewed. Bushy beard, optional for the ladies. Cookie crumbs in beard, grubby fingernails, slight whiff of turnip, soot-stained bow tie, white laboratory coat, old socks, sandals. Read the last bit of that. The superplane wound its way around one. Before descending into the ground, waiting there on the tarmac was a throng of boffins. The boffin all had serious expressions as they never had. All laughed in their lives. Sadly for them, this seriousness was untermined by having their hair and their long white laboratory coats whooshed around wildly by the superplane's super thrusters. Woof! Now the beards were covering faces, comb-overs were blown over, and skirts were inflated like balloons. Ruth, Yuri, and Spaceboy descended from the superplane with the doctor. As soon as the platform touched the ground, Dr. Shock sped straight towards the throng of boffins waiting for him. They scattered like pigeons. This way, called out the doctor. In no time, they were inside the cathedral to space exploration. Wow, said Ruth as she passed through the doors and took in the big view. A bit bigger than the barn room built my flying saucer, whispered the Spaceboy. It was a white building, longer than a football pitch, and it was as tall as 10 giraffes. It had white floors, white walls, and a white ceiling, all illuminated by the brightest white lights. The only colours were red, white, blue of the vast American flag that was painted on the wall at the far end of the hall. Everywhere you looked, there was something out of this world, a recreation of the surface of the moon, complete with astronaut and rocket and space buggy, a vast water tank with people in spacesuits floating around in it, practicing how to move in the weightlessness of space, a model of the solar system hanging from the ceiling like a giant mobile with each planet as a big football, a bank of computers as big as bungalows. They were whirring and chirping away, spewing out reams and reams of data. What looked like a terrifying fairground ride with the people in pods being spun round central axis, stomach churning speed, getting used to G-force on blast off. Banks of TV screens displaying dazzling views of outer space taken from satellites, a glass display of giant meteorites that had struck the Earth, a freezer with the glass door inside was a boffin dressed only in his underpants. His teeth were chattering, he was shivering all over, and his body had turned blue. The boffin must be experimenting with freezing cold of space. That we had popped into the freezer for a packet of frozen peas and somehow got trapped inside. A brand new gleaming space rocket stood tall in the centre of the building, its nose nudging the ceiling. It was the most beautiful thing Ruth had ever seen in her life. It made her feel tiny too, and she didn't mind that one bit. That only served to make her realise how epic a space rocket was. What a huge feat of science it was to design it, and what a triumph of engineering it was to build it. It was such a shame it didn't work. Finally, Ruth and Spaceboy spotted something shocking. Every piece of Spaceboy's flying saucer had been collected from Aunt Dorothy's farm. Although the parts were blackened and broken, a troop of boffins clutching tools and balancing on step ladders surrounded it. They were painstakingly putting it back together. This made Spaceboy wobbly on his feet. For a moment, Ruth thought he was going to stumble. She reached out her hand to steady him. "What's the matter?" she hissed. "It's my flying saucer," he whispered back. So when they put it back together, they are sure to figure out I am not from outer space. Why? Because it's powered by a tractor engine. Oh, yes, said Ruth, her tummy churning with nerves. Oops. And that is where I'm going to stop there, guys. It'll be chapter 39, Booms, sorry. But thank you again for listening for the time being, and I'm looking forward to getting this all finished with you guys. Thanks, guys, and bye.